So now, welcome to this session, which is the last session of the day. It will run till 4 o'clock. We'll, at that time, I think you can go downstairs and get your certificates for the day's training. The big question I have to ask, I think, always is that this is the second repetition of this session. Were any of you in the first one and you're just back because it was so really good that you thought, why bother going to anything else? Okay, well, I didn't think so, but it's always worth asking. So we're going to talk about some of the things, expand on some of the ideas that we talked about today, this morning in our brief session or preview of this, and we're also going to do an on-screen in-world display of the virtual space, or an example of the virtual space where you'll see Dave using his account and me using mine to log in and show you how we actually interact inside a virtual space like that. Before I get too far into the meat of avatar-assisted therapy, I'm doing a little bit of evangelism these days. We already saw this, so I'm not going to skip over that. The concept of disruptive innovation is a hot concept. If you haven't heard of it yet, you ought to expand your reading list a little bit, probably, because lots and lots of people are talking about this, and I happen to believe that it's an important business concept that we need to know about in the behavioral health field, substance abuse treatment field. The person who first propounded this, and it's a 10, 12-year-old idea, is a Harvard Business School professor named Clayton Christensen. If you look up disruptive innovation or Google disruptive innovation, believe me, you will find his name. You won't have to seek very deeply. He's really the grandfather of the whole thing, and has written about a dozen books in the last 10 years about this, including one which I highly recommend called The Innovators Prescription. Christensen, who is a very astute man, believes that the two industries that are the most ripe for some significant disruption, some change in the way people do business, are education and healthcare. He bemoans the fact that he thinks the Harvard Business School will probably be out of business in 10 years if they don't change the way that they deliver services. He talks about the University of Phoenix, which some of you know about. It's a big online university, and he did a project for the University of Phoenix, which they told him later they videotaped it, and they were going to distribute the videotape to all of their business school students. And he said, oh, how many business school students do you have? And they said 130,000. And he said, I said to myself, my God, at Harvard Business School, we have about 650 students at any given time. He said the University of Phoenix would not have to graduate a very large percentage of their 130,000 students in order to outdo us in terms of business school graduates. He said, it boggles your mind when you think about this sort of thing. He said, but we've got to start thinking about it. Are we able and willing to change the models in which we deliver service? And essentially his theory is shown this, and it's one version of this graph or another, and that is that companies that have been around for a while and high-performing companies tend to engage in what he calls sustaining innovations, things we do to make our products better. You know, it's a little bigger, it's a little better, it's a little faster, it's got, you know, an extra bell and another whistle and so on and so forth. Pretty much what we did last year, only slightly better than that. And they tend to ignore the lower end or cheaper markets. What happens, though, is with most companies over time, particularly as they become comfortable in leadership positions in the business world, is what they offer starts to outstrip what their customers want. That's the dotted line. Your customers only want so much, and they are only willing to pay so much for it. They don't necessarily want all the things you're willing to give to them. Okay, and we make that mistake sometimes if we try to do one-size-fits-all treatment for clients. Not everybody wants a full-blown 30 days residential care followed by 6 months of outpatient aftercare. Some clients want to come for 5 sessions. I want to come for 5 sessions and talk to you. Well, we don't work that way. You know, well, I guess what? I'm not going to be your customer then. You know, and that's a big thing with Christensen is customers don't buy our products, they buy solutions. You know, they hire us to do things for them, and if we're not paying attention to what they're hiring us for, we're going to lose them, because if we just want to try to sell them what we think is the coolest thing, we're going to get outside their range. So whenever you start to cross over that, whatever kind of business you're in, you leave open the possibility that somebody else is going to come along and disrupt your technology. And they're going to offer the services that your customers want, even though they might be not quite as good, or you know, they're cheaper, definitely, but if it satisfies the customer's need and what you're offering is too expensive or too time-consuming or whatever, the client investment is too high, they'll gravitate towards the lower end, and pretty soon the lower end starts improving their performance until they become a sustaining innovator. It's a cycle that you go through over and over and over again. Good example is Blockbuster, Netflix. Okay, Blockbuster was disrupted by Netflix. Blockbuster was store-based. You know, you had to drive to the store and you had to pick out the video, and sometimes the really good videos, they were all gone because they only had 5 copies of it or 10 copies of it or whatever, and you had to bring it back in 2 days or you got penalized and so on. Netflix comes along and says, well, we're going to do it all by mail. Now you don't have to get in your car at all. All you have to do is order things. We'll send it to you in the mail. We've got a mail distribution system that's fantastic. You'll have the movie within 24 hours. You can keep it as long as you want. You just can't get the next one until you send back the last one. We won't penalize you anything, though. It's not going to. You're not going to return a movie and end up it cost you $45 to have that movie because you forgot to bring it back to the Blockbuster store, which would happen at Blockbuster. But it cost you nothing. You just didn't get to see another movie until you sent us back the movie. And then Netflix, after putting Blockbuster out of business, basically, or during the process of putting Blockbuster out of business, started to put themselves out of business by having streaming video. Anybody have Netflix account now? Do you get your movies in the mail anymore, or you just stream them down in your computer? You still get the mail? There's always a Luddite or two in the crowd. That's okay. No, that's fine. I mean, they still do offer that option, although they almost shot themselves in the foot when they set up like this 2-tier pricing system after they had developed this really successful self-disruption, and then they had this like nice balance between people like you who preferred to get them in the mail and people who got a Roku box or just watch them on their computers.
Everything isn't on Roku.
That's true. You're right. That's true. The Netflix queue is not as widespread. So you watch those strange, exotic foreign movies, don't you? We know. That's okay. You don't have to tell us. It's all right. That's the beauty of a service like that. When you got Netflix films, there was 1 or 2 people in the universe who knew which films you got. It was the people at the shipping center. When you went to the Blockbuster store, you could run into your pastor, and he'd be like, you know, you'd both be looking at, what are you getting? What are you getting? What are you getting? Yeah, that kind of. Anyway, so that's a good example of disruptive technology. Another example of disruptive technology is our communications devices, right? You know, when Julius Caesar wanted to send a message to his general, he had to hire a guy to run, okay? Might have to run, that's where the marathon concept came from. The runner had to run 26 miles to tell the Greek leader about the attack coming or whatever it was. And when Abraham Lincoln wanted to send a message across the country, he used the telegraph. You know, and when John F. Kennedy wanted to send a message to somebody who was in some other part of the world, he used the telephone. You know, and but when we used to use telephones that were wired into the wall. And then we used telephones that we carried around in bags. Anybody ever remember a bag phone? You have a bag phone? Okay. And then we had telephones that we carry around in our pocket. And as I asked this morning, how many of you actually use your telephone as a telephone? You know, well, some people do, you know, but not so many. We use it for a million of other things, and that is another type of disruptive innovation. You know, the company that first invented digital photography was Kodak, which is now out of business. And you know why Kodak is out of business? Because they couldn't figure out how to make a digital camera that was cheap. They could figure out how to make digital cameras that were really expensive, but you know, their business was always sort of in film. So guess who came along and disrupted them? A film company, Fuji. Remember Fujifilm? It was the cheap version of Kodak film. You get the orange and black Kodak film, or you get the green Fuji, green and white Fuji box, right? Fuji was always about 20% cheaper than Kodak. You know, they were already being disruptive. And then they went Kodak one better. They figured out how the digital technology worked, and they started making these $120 cameras. So where'd you buy your last camera, your last digital camera? Who'd you buy your last digital camera from? That's right. Sprint, Verizon, GTE, whatever. You know, you didn't buy it from Fuji, you didn't buy it from Kodak, you didn't buy it from the digital camera business as a camera is almost out of business because the cameras we get on our smartphones are as good or better than what you buy in the store as a digital camera. They're a lot better than the good expensive cameras you could buy 5 or 6 years ago. They've got a quality and, you know, and their ease of use and, you know, plus I take the picture, I can email it right away or tweet it or text it or do almost anything I want, you know. So anyway, it's important to pay attention to this because this is happening in our field as well. You know, as we retain our sort of our rigid way of doing it. It was interesting, I told Lisa March that I read an article that she wrote about 10 years ago, and it's actually about the study she talked about this morning. I said, I read this article you wrote about 10 years ago in which you stated what the challenges were to the substance abuse treatment field, and the challenges were that there were not enough resources to go around, there were not enough trained counselors to deliver services, and services were not being compensated for at an adequate level. And as far as I knew, you could have written that article yesterday. I said, we've got the same problems, and unfortunately, we tend to respond to them in pretty much the same way. You know, most treatment providers that I know of, and I know of a lot, have not changed the way they do business dramatically over the last 10 or 15 years or so. Still pretty much the same way we used to do things, particularly when it comes to methodology, not necessarily evidence-based practices and such. We have adopted some newer evidence-based practices, but the way we do it is you come to my office, you come in, you sit down, we have an individual counseling session, we have a group counseling session, whatever, just the way we've always done things. And so I'm saying there's disruptors coming along. I think for the substance abuse field, the biggest disruptors is the mainstream medical field. So clinics, advanced practice nurses, private physicians and hospitals are, with healthcare reform, are going to find it very smart to get back into our business again like they were 20 years ago or so, or 30 years when I started. My first 2 jobs were with big hospitals, you know, and 5 years into my career, you couldn't find a hospital that had a treatment center. It wasn't worth it to them anymore. They gave up the treatment business to the smaller, independent, mom and pop type of organizations, or the Caron Foundations, or the Betty Fords, or whatever, because it didn't fit the hospital model anymore. But guess what? It's coming back, and they're more agile and flexible and willing to do things differently than we are. You know, Frank Zappa, one of my other favorite quotes I didn't put up there. Frank Zappa says, I don't think that the world is going to end in fire and ice. I think it's more likely to end in nostalgia and paperwork. And I think that typifies the substance abuse field in my 30 years, is we're big on nostalgia and we're big on paperwork. You know, everything's got to be written down, and we're always thinking about the good old days and wish we could still do things like we used to. Can't. Okay, we talked about this morning. I'm not going to spend too much more time on that. This is an aerial view of the Quadrangle at Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri, where I live. If you zoomed out a little bit further, my house is down here where this tape is, a little bit south and a little west of the campus, not too far, several blocks, but not too far. Quadrangles at college campuses are called that because they have 4 angles. I took 4 years of Latin. I know. I get to use it once a year on an occasion like this. I don't know why I'm still holding my phone. So they have 4 angles, and so you'd build your main buildings. That's the administration building, and these are classroom buildings on the sides. You build your main building, you build a walkway around there, but people don't want to walk around the corners. They want to cut across the lawn, right? So as they cut across the lawn, they wear paths. It becomes a good idea to pave them, right? So you start paving the path. So people tell you where you want to go. There's a famous story about the creation of Disneyland. And Walt Disney, after the first season of Disneyland, is sitting down with all of his staff, and the gardeners and the groundskeepers are upset. They said, you know, we built all these really nice hedges and things like that, and people are pushing their way through them, and they're tromping down, you know, walking through the hedges and the garden and just, you know, trampling our handiwork into the ground. And he said, well, any place that happens, put a sidewalk. He said, because obviously what they're telling you is they would like to walk that way, and you put a plant in their way. You know, and I mean, it's a good perspective on things. People tell you where you want to go. When I asked the question this morning about how many of you did any shopping this holiday season online, that was an appropriate question to ask. People are telling us they like to do things online. It's convenient to do things online. They like the fact that I can go do my shopping, I can buy things, I can have meaningful interactions without having to get in my car, without having to worry about the weather, without having to worry about whether I brush my hair, or for that matter, even if I am in my pajamas or not. You know, I'd rather do it this way. Not everything and not always, but more things than ever, more frequently than ever. So we need to keep in touch with that idea. We need to recognize that globally, the growth of internet usage is getting larger and larger all the time. North America has probably the lowest growth rate up there over 10 years, but that's because in the beginning they were higher than anybody else. But they're still, over 10 years, have increased by 152%. 78%, so almost 79% of everybody in North America is an internet user. And other areas of the world are coming along way faster than we are. The web experience, if you go back to the 1988, 1989, when I first started coming into contact with the internet in any meaningful way, basically you were involved in bulletin boards or chat rooms, where you would post a message on the bulletin board, and anybody who was a member of that bulletin board, or if it was CompuServe or, you know, AOL or whatever, the early providers, would be able to read your message the next time they came online. They wouldn't see anything in the meantime, but once they came online, they could read the message you post. It might have been an answer to somebody else's question. It might be a different question. It might be just you spouting off your opinion on something, and then they could post an answer to that, which you would then see the next time you came online. So it was this sort of flip, you know, leapfrogging kind of a thing. As I'm online and I read what you wrote last time, then you go online and read what I wrote last time, and you could have a conversation with somebody, but it could take days. And plus you were paying at that time for every minute of connection. You know, you might pay two cents a minute, but you know, over the course of an hour, the AOL billed you $1.20. You know, and if you stayed online too long and went to sleep and forgot, you know, you'd wake up in the morning, you'd have like a $35 bill, and you didn't know where it came from. So that was the early days, pre-web internet. Then the World Wide Web came along with the basic web user interface, which was basically menu bars and buttons. You know, I go to the opening page of somebody's website, and I have a list of 6 choices, and I pick a choice, and it takes me to another part of a page with more buttons. Information here, buttons here. You know, and so I could work my way down through this hierarchy of web pages, but it was all static. None of the information ever changed from one use to the other. It didn't keep track of who visited. It didn't offer to send me more information. I just clicked on buttons and moved around inside a big library of documents, etc. And then we moved into the more interactive Web 2.0, where you could actually ask for help. You could press a button and somebody would come online, open up a chat window. Hey, what can I do for you? Or you would actually go online, and when you first came to my web page, you'd see a videotape of me walking across the web page on your computer saying, hey, welcome. You know, and if you signed in with like your name, I'd say, hey, Bob, welcome. You know, I mean, and so you can set up all these features to make it more interesting and more interactive. So more give and take. The information, the way information is displayed on Web 2.0 pages can change from one visit to the next depending on where you looked last time. You know, the last time you came here, you went and looked about information on this particular subject. for 10 minutes, so I'm going to make that the first choice that you see when you pop up, because I'm going to assume you're coming back to learn more about the stuff that you were interested in last time. If you weren't, you want to go look at something different, you can do that, but it's an interactive situation that's set up. And now we're talking about the 3D web, which is where you get online and you're going to a website, but the fact of the matter is you're entering a three-dimensional environment in which you interact with other people. And when we display the virtual world, we'll show you exactly how that works. So I want to talk briefly about what is an avatar. An avatar is a computer-generated character that represents you in a virtual space and allows you to meet and interact synchronously at the same time with others in the same virtual space. I mentioned this morning. This is the key concept. We can have a face-to-face meeting. Hi, how you doing? Or I can go to my office and you can go to the mental health clinic in your hometown. We can get these expensive cameras to show us each other. Or we can get online in a three-dimensional immersive environment at our computers no matter where we are. You know, you could be an over-the-road truck driver sitting at a truck stop and you could log in. And I could be in my office, or I could just as easily be on vacation in Jamaica sitting on the beach, and I could get online and we could have our session. Or we could get people from all around the country coming in and do our space. So how many of you have ever actually been an avatar, had an avatar in online? 1, 2, oh, I know you did. 3, 4, okay. See, some of you are reluctant or maybe, or just sleeping. I'm not sure, there's a delay here. You know? Okay, so 3 or 4 or 5 people out of 20. Okay, so tell me, what's the name of this game? Anybody know what this called? Who knows what this game is called? Pong, okay, so more than 5 or 6. This is Pong, okay? It's one of the earliest video games, online games that you can play. It's ping pong, right? That's the net, that's the ball, and you move this up and down if you're the player on the left, you move that up and down if you're the player on the right, you hit the ball back and forth. Keep score, right? Anybody ever play Pong? Play Pong? Who played Pong? Okay, that was your avatar. Okay, your avatar was a little white rectangle. You could move it up and you could move it down. If you thought you were like a really good Pong player, you'd like try to put English on the, you try to wait till the very last second and spin your little dial real fast. You know what? There was no English in Pong. I got news for you. It didn't matter how fast you did that or how cleverly you waited for that moment when you thought that that little dot that was the ball came into contact with your avatar paddle. No spin, forget it. You're dreaming. Okay, but we thought we could, okay? So anybody who ever played Pong, you've had an avatar already. Boring avatar, you know, this sort of unidimensional avatar, but back up. Computer-generated character, which represents you in a virtual space, allows you to meet and interact synchronously with others in the same virtual space. So I've got an opponent, I've got me. We're in the same virtual space. When the ball crosses the net, I see it and they see it at the same time going in the same direction, okay? Game name. Say it louder, come on, be enthusiastic. We're on camera today. Pac-Man, okay? Anybody ever play Pac-Man? Raise your hand if you ever play Pac-Man, okay? Who was the avatar in Pac-Man? What was your avatar? The Pac-Man. Little yellow Pac-Man, your little bonus Pac-Mans, because what could happen in Pac-Man? You could die, right? You could die 3 times before. What happened then? Game over, right? Game over. Okay, Pac-Man, the horrid game over. So you could die 3 times, so you had 3 Pac-Mans to start. It's the start of a game, you've only got 70 points, okay? The object of the game is to go through this maze. So first of all, you've got a better avatar than you had in Pong. It's yellow. It's got a mouth that actually moves. So it's not just a rectangle. Second best thing about Pac-Man, better than Pong, you can now go in 2 directions. You can go this way and you can go this way. So you can't just use the dial anymore like you did for Pong. It had a dial. Pac-Man, you had to have a joystick or a keyboard. You had to use a keyboard one way or another. And in fact, because you could now go in 2 directions, you almost had the thought in your mind, remember the spin on the ball in Pong where you thought you were putting spin? You almost felt like you were turning corners. You really weren't. You were going downside, down, over, you know, I mean, you really weren't going, you know, careening around a corner like you would, you know, 50 miles an hour in a car, you know, you were just turning corners, you know, but it felt like that. Now, what happened when you ate these dots? You got points, right? 7 dots, 70 points. Just started. What happens when you eat these 4 dots in the corner? Anybody remember? They power up, so you get more points, and what else happens? The ghosts, which are these 4 things that chase you around and try to kill you, all change color and they turn dark blue. So when the ghosts are dark blue, you can chase them, and if you eat the ghosts, 2 really cool things happen. One thing is you get even more points, and the second thing is the ghost has to go into timeout. Okay, ghost goes back in the corral and has to sit there for a while before that ghost can come back out and chase you around. So you're safe from the ghost for a while, plus you get the extra points. Good deal, huh? Great game. Pac-Man's a great game. It's like a metaphor for life. So, however, when you're chasing these ghosts down after you made them change color, after 30 seconds or so, they start to blink. And after they blink for about 10 more seconds, they change back to their original colors, red, pink, green, whatever they are. This is a bad rendering, yellow. Red, pink, green, yellow. And then they can turn on you and kill you again, right? And what happens in Pac-Man, as happens in many, many games of this type, is something that I always like to call, because it expresses it correctly, the oh shit moment. Okay, and that's the moment in time when you're playing the game when something happens, like the ghosts change back to their original color, when you're like 1 dot away from killing them, but you don't have time to get them, and they're going to turn on you, and there's no way you can get away, and the only thing you can think is, oh shit, right? How many of you have ever said, oh shit, playing Pac-Man? Raise your hand, be honest. Or some version of that. Come on, you have your own version. I'm sorry, did that offend anyone? If it did, you're too sensitive. That's all I can say. So it's, you know, I could have told you what I really used to say, I mean, which was a lot worse than that. But so you'd have that moment. And the reason I point this out is because look at this. This is an immersive virtual environment, much like we are talking about with avatars, although it's like the 101 version, and now we're into the version number 10,085. We're 25 years down the road in terms of capability and capacity. The avatars move in 3 dimensions. They look much more like people. It can even be made to look like you if you want them to look like you. They're not little things like that. You're not moving in 2 dimensions. And the purpose of the game goes way beyond just eating dots and having ghosts. But while you were playing this little tiny entry-level kindergarten immersive game, you got invested in it enough to say, oh shit, when you thought you were going to get killed. And you felt it. And I mean, all games like that were like that. You know, you'd have that moment where you would actually have an emotional response, despite the fact all you were doing was sitting in your living room at a computer. Okay? So I just make that point. Today now we build virtual spaces like this. So we have a little virtual meeting area. And we can have seating arrangements, and we can have live plants, and we can have buildings, and we can have indoors and outdoors. I showed you this earlier. We're sitting around the beach. And we can have these 4 people as a good example, include myself, who's in St. Louis, Missouri at the time. Brenda is a former colleague of mine, also from Missouri, but she lived about 120 miles to the northwest of me in the far top tier of counties in Missouri, about 20 miles south of Iowa. Zinnia lives in a little town called Sequim, Washington, S-E-Q-U-I-M, okay? And the other guy lives actually down here in a little closer to Washington, D.C., but in Maryland. So we're all having a meeting and a get-together, despite the fact that we're separated by, in the case of those 2 people, an entire continent, many hundreds of miles, but we're all having the same immersive virtual environment. We're sitting by the ocean. I built this ocean scenery for a client of mine who's down in the southwest part of the United States, where almost everything that you see when you look around or drive around great distances is the desert. And he said, you know, my staff wondered if we could have like a beachfront because we never get to see the ocean. So I said, oh, yeah, no problem. So we build an ocean, and the water ripples and comes in and out like the waves would, and there's a sound in the background that makes it sound like the The waves are coming in, the waves are going out. There's a seagull flies by every once in a while. When you sit by the fire moves and crackles like a fire really would, and sparks fly up. And you know, all of that stuff, or none of that stuff, I should probably say, has anything to do with really delivering counseling services. It hasn't anything to do with the methodology that we use, or the evidence-based practices that we use, or how we train clients to interact with clients virtually, or staff to interact with clients virtually. But it has everything to do with the clients feeling like they're really in a real space with everybody else. It's designed, it's like a Hollywood set, okay? And the big thing about a Hollywood set, Dave alluded to this a little earlier this morning, is what's our capacity on the user end to render things. So we have to be somewhat simpler than we might be if we knew that people had really expensive computers with really high quality video cards. We don't expect that to happen. So our scenes tend to be somewhat simplistic, but we build in as much realism as we possibly can. If I wanted to film a scene in the Old West, in a town on the main street of the Old West, and I knew it was just going to be me and Dave facing off against each other in one of these classic gunfights with the street here and some buildings on the side, and I knew that the camera was never going to be more than about 3 feet behind me or 3 feet behind him, looking in those two directions. The only thing I would have to build would be the front of the buildings. I would build the fronts of these buildings, and they'd have 2x4s holding them up so that they were vertical, and they'd have things painted on them, and one of them be a feed store, and one of them be a saloon, and one of them be the jail, and one of them would be the hotel. And you know, you've seen this millions of times, and most of the times when you were in scenes like that, that's what you were seeing. You were seeing flat fronts of buildings, but it looked like a town because your perspective never changed much. Well, if I knew that, in fact, after I shot Dave dead like a dog in his tracks, I was going to walk out of town, and the camera was going to watch me as I walked out of town. When I got to the end of that street of buildings, I'd probably want a side on those buildings, because it would go past the end of it. And if all you saw was the 2x4s, it would ruin the illusion. So now I want sides on those buildings. And if, in fact, before I decided to leave town, I actually decided I'm going to go in that saloon and I'm going to have me a drink before I get out of town, then I would want to actually build an interior for the saloon. But it might be the only room out of all the buildings that appeared to be in that space that was real. And when we build these virtual spaces, that's exactly the way we try to do it, is we build in as many features as are necessary to give people the feeling that they're in a real space without tacking on a whole lot of stuff that we don't really need, okay? If it's a low asset item, meaning it puts very little drain or strain on your computer, we'll put it in here. To have a seagull fly by, you know, across the edge of the beach every 2 minutes or so doesn't take a whole lot of resources. But to have like 10 dozen seagulls flocking around in a giant circle, you know, for 10 minutes, where you saw every single one of them for the entire time you sat there, would tax your computer. So we won't do that sort of thing, even though it could be a moderately natural behavior. Now the big key is, yeah, we've got this tool that allows our clients to link up with our staff members 24 hours a day, 7 days a week if they want to, in these pretty realistic environments, have the types of interaction. And again, as I said this morning, we're not developing new types of therapy. We are developing new platforms for therapy, new places in which you can deliver counseling. The majority of our projects are either delivering some kind of curriculum-based information, like a follow-up driving class for people who are first-time DUI offenders, or a smoking cessation class that the American Lung Association provides, you know, that we're providing to a group of college-age students who were recruited from 4 different college campuses because they felt uncomfortable going to community quit smoking programs in some church basement where the average age was 55, you know. And so we got all these kids together, younger people together, but we're delivering a curriculum-based type of program. Or we're delivering the types of therapy that you deliver in your offices all the time. Motivational interviewing, motivational enhancement, cognitive behavioral therapy, things that Lisa Marsh talked about this morning, those things that have been demonstrated to be able to be delivered online in one way or another, over the phone, over internet chat rooms, and we're using the same thing. We're not suggesting to anybody that they create some new type of therapeutic approach. We're just making you omnipresent and omnipotent. You have the ability to be anywhere your clients need you to be. You have the ability, it'd be as if somebody came and gave you the right and the resources that it took to build an office anywhere you needed one at any point in time. And so that's what the virtual world is really all about, the virtual environment. So the big question usually comes down to, does it work? And you know, we're 4 years into developing virtual environments for this. There's been a couple of projects, I'll get to you in just a second, a couple of projects that we've completed, and we've got some information we can talk about with that. Did you have a question you wanted me to get to before this?
Voice activated, or is it something they have to type into?
Both of those options are available. When we get in world, which will be shortly, and we start talking about how we interact, we can show you the text chatting. We can show you, we've got the voice to work one way, but we didn't have time to tweak the thing so it worked both ways, although we think we might have figured out what the problem was. So we'll look into that. But yeah, you can use voice, you can use text, you can use a combination, okay? The one thing I want to get at too, though, is very high completion rates in this program. As you can expect, because you've removed a lot of the barricades to people getting into your office, you know, whether that's their fear of stigma, or whether that's bad public transportation, or whether that's an automobile you can't rely on, or I didn't have the gas money, or I don't want to spend the 45 minutes to an hour it takes to drive to your office for my session with the 45 minutes to an hour it takes to drive back home when I'm done. You know, we have to start thinking again in terms of our client's investment. You know, a client investment in an hour of therapy is not an hour unless you're doing something virtual. Client investment in an hour of therapy is the hour of therapy plus the drive time, plus the time it took them to get ready if they felt like they had to get ready, plus, you know, you start adding it up, and it's not just the money that the insurance company or Medicaid pays or they're paying for their session, but it's the $6 or $8 or $10 worth of gas that they have to put in the tank of their car every time they make a 25, 30 mile one-way trip. You know, there's a much bigger investment that clients make in coming to treatment in our offices than we're generally aware of. And my theory has always been that if we're doing our job right, over time, clients feel less and less inclined to be in treatment. And they should. I mean, we should be helping them feel that way. They tend to feel less inclined faster than we do. I mean, we think they need to stay longer than they think they need to stay. You know, they think they're better faster, I guess, is what it comes down to. Well, over time, that's fine, and that should slope down, and it should get to a point where you discontinue. You can comfortably discontinue. But you kind of like to do it on your own terms. The problem is the client has this investment level, and the higher their investment level is, the sooner it encounters that motivation line to keep staying in treatment. So if it costs me a lot, time and money and energy and whatever, to get to treatment, I'm going to drop out sooner. But if I can bring that investment level down, it'll bring that intersection point further down the road. I'll stay in treatment longer, and we've demonstrated that. That was what the first thing we expected that would happen, and it happened. We had 90%, 91% program completion rates, compared with about 35, 40% in our brick and mortar office programs. We had almost 2.5 times the number of activities engaged in over a week or a month or whatever. Clients came to more things more often because it was easier to get there. Once again, if it takes me an hour to get to your office, I can spend 3 hours a week coming and getting 1 hour of therapy. Or I can come instantly and get 3 hours of therapy. You know, so if I'm willing to spend 3 hours, what would I rather do? Would I rather get help, or would I rather get there? You know, I want to spend my time getting help, or I want to spend my time getting there. And this was something we didn't expect. We built something into our programs that is a smart idea, which is we allowed our clients, and I think I discussed this a little this morning, to use assumed names. And we did that for privacy, you know, for HIPAA reasons. And so there's no information that would identify an actual person on the server where this virtual world resides. But what we found out was the clients understood that they were anonymous to everybody in the interaction except the therapist. So if you were having a group session with, and you guys were my group over here at the table, you would all see your avatar names, but they'd all be made up names. You would each, and my name would be real because I'm the therapist. So you'd see my name over my head. You'll see when we get in here how your avatar name sort of follows you around. But everybody else would have pseudonyms or aliases or made up names. And the clients suddenly realize that I can talk about anything I want because I'm not going to worry about running into any of these people out on the street next week. You know, I feel much more comfortable talking about difficult issues. That was a universal response we got. We thought we were covering ourselves from a confidentiality perspective, and what we discovered was, yeah, we did that, but we got a bonus, which was our clients almost globally said they felt more comfortable talking about things that were tough to talk about.
It's moving along. We've got a couple of groups going over at Cadenzia. We're ready to get some groups going with another group, and then we've got 2 more projects all lined up, ready to be trained. So it's moving along. Hopefully by summertime, everybody will have some groups online, and everybody will be working in world. Yes.
I have a question about how you incorporated research into the project.
There's 2 pieces of that. As you know, in Maryland, if you are a funded provider, you have to use SMART. And we've always been able to get some information from SMART. We can get how long you stayed in treatment, how often you attended, whether or not you used, whether you got a new job, whether you got rearrested. There's just a lot of information that we can get from SMART. That's going to be the main source of our research. We're going to compare the patients that are in Avatar to patients who aren't in Avatar, who are in regular clinics. In the same clinic. And then the other part will be, and you'll see it when we go online here, is there'll be a user satisfaction questionnaire. Every time that somebody uses the project, the counselor and the patient will fill out a brief 5 or 6 question questionnaire that will automatically link to, it's not SurveyMonkey, but it's a program like that, where we'll be gathering information ongoing about how people are reacting to it and whether they perceive it as being helpful and useful.
What we're going to do is we're going to show you the demo space we've set up for IGSR and used as sort of the basis for building out some of our other virtual spaces. So I mentioned to you guys this morning, really it's up to your imagination what this looks like. You can make these virtual spaces as fantastic or imaginative as you want them to, or they can look as much like your real spaces as you want them to look, and it's really up to the individual client what it looks like. So when I first log in, you see I just go to a website. That's the web address up there. I had my username and my password. I fill it in. It gives me the choice to choose my avatar. I've already chosen one, but I could just as easily pick this one, or I could pick this one, or I could change my gender if I felt like it. And within the avatar choices, I can also change things like my hair color and the clothes I wear and customize. There's something like, I don't know, 1,100 possible combinations of the avatar choices. Surprisingly though, not surprisingly, there's like 14 that are default, and usually most people end up with one of the 14. So it's not that unusual to see 2 or 3 people who look alike. So I usually at least change my clothing color so I don't look like anybody. So Dave, are you already in there? Okay. Okay, so I hit the enter, and I'm in the ground level space of their virtual area. And the things, Dave will pop in here in a minute, and when he does, you'll notice that number one, his avatar will show up, but also I'll get a little announcement saying that Dave Ennis has entered. And that's important to note because nobody can sneak up on you. And if you're engaged in some kind of an activity and somebody logs in who maybe isn't really scheduled to be involved in that activity, you'll actually get a notification that they're there. And it's not unlike if you were doing a counseling session one-on-one or a group and somebody accidentally walked in your office. You know, it's like, your computer locked up? No, Dave. Okay. Well, I'll move on. When you come in, just let me know. Now, the second thing I'll show you about this space is that we track activity of clients by setting up boxes like these blue boxes you see in here. So each one, there you are, see where it says David Ennis has joined. Okay, so when he dropped in, and I can pop that back up. When he dropped in, I get that announcement automatically, and now there's Dave. He's come around behind me. So we can zone out areas and we can track client activity in the virtual space using these zones. So anytime somebody breaks the plane of one of these walls and goes into one of these boxes, it actually creates an event that shows up in a database. So you could keep track and actually link this with your electronic health record and demonstrate that certain avatars had spent a certain amount of time in the place they were supposed to be. So like we keep, I don't know how you do it in Maryland, but in Missouri, you kept attendance logs. So you had, if you had a note in your chart that said, you know, John Doe was in group therapy from 10:30 till noon, you needed a attendance log and the note, both, in order for the auditors to be, you know, to pay you, you know, to be willing to pay you. And this will keep track of that. It'll at least tell that the avatar was in the place in question, the location in question, during the hours they were supposed to be there. And so you can track that automatically. If Dave and I want to have a conversation, as we mentioned, we can use the chat tool, so I can say, hi Dave, and Dave can respond to me. And you'll see as we type in here, it puts a timestamp on what's said, it says who said it, and then it says what they said. So you keep track of that activity. So he says, glad to be here, and I say, welcome to group, and on, and we go back and forth in the chat window, and after a period of time, let's say we're at the end of our group or our individual interaction. So yeah, Dave's giving me something to talk about. So I can hit this little button that says show hide chat, and it'll open up a box with all that text in there, and I can cut and paste that text, and I can put it into a Word document, and now I have a record of everything everybody said during that interaction, even if it was an hour long. I could cut and paste the entire record, and then I'd have that to review when I did my clinical notes. Now, one of the things that people often ask is, can it be set up to do that automatically and just log your chat? And I always tell them, yes, it can be, but we don't recommend it because it's really not a good idea. Like if you tape sessions for supervision, it's not a good idea to save your tapes over a period of time. You should destroy them once you've used them, just because it's just a principle of smart behavior when it comes to the government. Never save anything you're not required to save. You know, so we don't automatically save text chats, but if you want to cut a text chat out and you want to paste it in a document so you can write your follow-up notes, and then when you're done with your follow-up notes, you can destroy that, delete the document, that's not a bad idea, and then you'll have exactly what people said. Now, we also use voice chat. Have you got your headset on?
Hello, Dick.
Okay, so now you can see it's, so if I had a headset on, I'd be hearing that through my headphones. So somebody asked the question earlier, do you use audio chat or do you use text chat? And the answer is you could use either or both. What we tend to do is we use the lowest common denominator so that nobody's left out. Okay, so if, for example, we were having group and you guys were my group, and I said, so where is everybody today? And everybody said, I'm at home, I'm at home, I'm in my office by myself, I'm at Starbucks. Okay, my question for you, if you're at Starbucks, the first thing I know is you can't talk. because people sitting around you will hear you talk, even if you have a microphone, like a boom microphone. You're not going to be speaking to us today, okay? But what I want to know is, do you have headphones or earplugs where you can hear us? Because if you can hear all of us and you're willing to just type your portion of it, we'll probably do that. Because everybody can hear everybody. We hear you by reading what you type. And everybody can talk. We talk, you type. If you're okay with it, I'm okay with it, okay? If you said, I'm at Starbucks and I don't have a headset and I don't have a microphone, I'm going to suggest that everybody type, because you can't hear us talking over the speakers. So we're going to have to type anyway. And despite the fact we could talk to each other, you'd be left out constantly. Okay, so we'll go to the lowest common denominator. If somebody in the group can neither talk audibly or listen to somebody else's audio feed, we'll all type. Okay, and that's fine. Or if you decided as the counselor that I always want to have a record, like a chat record, and I'm only going to get that if people type, you can decide everybody types, always. What we found in general over time is once you use it as a clinician and your clients use it for a period of time, people can almost type as fast as they can talk. I mean, it's really not that hard to do. And you can get a lot of nuance about what's going on from people just by sometimes how they type. Dave, if you start to type something to me without hitting the enter button, and you guys look up here next to his name, so he's over there and we're having a conversation, and I asked Dave a tough question. So Dave, tell me really, when was the last time you got high? Dave's starting to write something, and I see that little box opens up next to his name with the 3 dots in it. Now erase whatever you were saying, Dave. Just erase it completely. Oh, okay. And now start to send me something else. It'll stop and it'll start again. And so I can start telling, okay, Dave's answering my question by typing stuff and then thinking twice about what he's about to say. Just like a client in group might do that. You know, you put somebody on the spot and they start to try to, well, I mean, you know, you can sense discomfort in your client interactions just by that sort of thing. You can do it the same way here by paying attention to how people are typing. Our good counselors who've been doing this stuff for a long time, and they might be fooling themselves, but they say they can often tell just by how long it takes somebody to answer how genuine their answer is. Because people establish sort of a pattern, you know. I'm quick to type my answer, I'm slow to type my answer, and they start to get a feeling for it. So you can gain a lot of nuance just even if you're only using the text chat as a way of interacting. I personally prefer audio. I like it over not because I'm a bad typist, just because I like to hear people, but there's some really good reasons for doing the text chat too. Yeah, so Dave just said, okay, it's been a rough day, and he puts that last part all in capital letters with exclamation point, then he's underlying what he said earlier. No, I mean, it's been a really rough day, okay? So there's a lot of things you can do to express your emotion without necessarily hearing somebody. Were you going to ask another question?
Are you able to download a curriculum if you're in like a group setting?
Okay, the question is, were you able to download curriculum if you're in a group setting? So for example, if I want to show a PowerPoint presentation, can I set up a screen inside the virtual space and show? Is that a good rephrasing of your question?
Or if not a PowerPoint, but just maybe, I can't think, doing an evidence-based curriculum that will require the group participants to do some type of tool work around that.
Okay, so the participants, as part of your interaction with them, might need to fill out a form or something. Yeah, you can actually, this little survey, and Dave mentioned this earlier, this is a survey we have set up for his space where, and it's interactive. You know, this is a web page over here. So I go through here and I answer the questions and it tracks my answers. And this could just as easily be a piece of the curriculum like you mentioned, you know, where they're actually going to your website and they're filling in a questionnaire at your request, and then when they're done, they hit the submit button or the done button, and it gets submitted under their name, and you've got the data. You've captured that data. Answer your specific question, you can build in this little web to the side of where you're viewing the virtual space, and you can cause any web page destination to show there that you want. I mean, in my virtual demonstration space that I show people, I have my Twitter feed, you know, so it's got the last 10 things I put up on Twitter there, and it's an interactive page. So if I say, oh, you guys should read this article, you know, about innovation in healthcare, you can click on the link and it'll open up a web page to that article. You know, so it's a completely interactive type of thing, and that includes if people are filling in documents or blanks or questionnaires or taking tests or whatever they want, you can do that. What I was responding to also earlier is that you could set up a viewer screen, and you could show a video or you could show a PowerPoint presentation in world on the viewer screen so that we're all sitting around. Let's just go up, Dave, to group 2 to the group room, let's say. So, hey, it's my space, man. Dude. To move between levels or scenes in a virtual space, you use the buttons on the left, but to move quickly on the same level to another space, you use these across the top. They're like a little teleport. So this zooms me over to the group room. As you see, I still have that blue box around this space because I want to know when people come in. And like I said, when we're using this, we turn that color off. That becomes transparent. The box is still there and it's still tracking, but the clients never see the box. It's just there to show you. So we sit down in group here, and if we decided that we wanted to put a screen up here on this wall back here in the back, and we wanted to show a PowerPoint presentation and talk to everybody while they were sitting in the group room and give our PowerPoint presentation, we could do that. You can stream pretty much anything in from the outside. Yes? Yeah, you know, interestingly enough, I'd say the project that we've got with Gaudenzia has a pretty broad range of clients, and some of them, their literacy level is relatively low. You do have to have a basic capacity to express yourself in writing if you're going to use this. But people are real tolerant of two-finger typing. That's not critical. And people are pretty tolerant of misspellings. And I've actually, I was in testing some things one night, and I came across a client who was just wandering around from their agency, and we had a long conversation. And you know, if I had to guess, not being a total professional at this, I'd say their literacy level was probably about 6th grade. You know, there were lots of misspelled words, but you know what? He was able to communicate, answer my question. I said, how do you like the space? Is this enjoyable for you? And you know, and it went fairly well, actually. I mean, there's a bottom line to it. I mean, you can only go, you know, you couldn't be 4 years old and use this well, you know. Nah, well, nah. But and then again, if you're all able to use audio all the time, and you can set that up, I mean, you can force that, you know, if you wanted to, those people could function better. People who are not so good at expressing themselves in writing could still function well if they can express themselves verbally. So that's a doable thing as well.
So that leads me to another thing. You came across somebody who was, I guess, in off hours.
Yep.
And I guess clients can arrange to do that. How do you recommend that programs or people handle it? Suppose, for example, a threat is made off hours or something like that.
Well, we generally believe, and it's part, you know, you make certain compacts or agreements with your clients to deliver treatment to them. Like, you won't bring weapons into the facility, you won't physically assault another client, or that doesn't mean it never happens. Okay, and when it happens, there's consequences, and you levy the consequences, and that's why you have them in the first place, and hopefully it deters the next thing from happening. Okay, so right off the bat, I'll tell you, just as in real life, you can't guarantee that you'll solve every problem. What we believe is that in general, when we agree in good faith with our clients that they will not come in or let somebody else come in to the virtual space posing as them using their account, that they will honor that. And there are ways we've developed to test it from time to time. So we can test clients whether you're really you know, and every once in a while we do that with somebody because we want to keep them honest. You know, you keep honest people honest, you know, by testing them from time to time, and there's nothing wrong with that. So that having been said, we try to minimize that. But also that having been said, and this is part of, if I'm talking to you and you're a new client, I'm going to say, you know, one of the agreements you're going to make is that you're always you, and you don't give your login information to somebody else who doesn't belong in here. But here's what I'm going to tell you. If you do that, and or if you are logged in as you, and you behave in any of the following ways that are inappropriate or unacceptable, there will be consequences. And I don't care if you came in and bullied somebody or insulted them or were sexually inappropriate in your comments or whatever, or if you gave your username and password to your brother-in-law and he did it, you're the one who's going to be held responsible for it. Okay, you'll be held accountable for it. And pretty much you're going to squelch 95% of your problems just by outlining the rules well in advance. And the other 5, you know, you can usually spot the people who are going to abuse the system fairly early on and deal with it like you would any other situation in real life. So any other questions about this? I'm trying to think of what else. Is there anything specifically else you'd like me to show them? Oh yeah, you shouldn't have to remind me that this is one of the best parts of this, okay? So are you nearby still?
I'm in the chair. I'm sitting down.
Oh, okay. So if we're interacting, and let's say we were having, whoops, I'm sort of turned around. Let's say we're having a group activity and there were like 5 of us in here instead of just Dave and I. Anybody who types anything in the chat window, everybody will see it. Anybody who says anything, audio, anybody with a headset or earplugs will hear it. Okay, if we're on this level. Now, if somebody was back down at that reception area where we started and they were having group, we would not know it. We wouldn't hear them, we wouldn't see them, we wouldn't know they were present unless we went back down there. So you move to different levels to get a certain level of privacy or security. But once you're on that level, pretty much everybody can hear you, with one exception. If I go to this online users box, and let's say there were 8 of us here, and because we're having group, and Dave is one of my clients, I can click this little balloon here. You see this balloon next to the head icon, and it opens up a new window, and it says private chat. And I send a message, and I say, hey, Dave, private chat. And in his viewer window, I can tell you a window pops up that says private chat from Dick Dillon, and he knows that only he and I are going to see this. Okay? So I'm going to say to Dave, your comments are great, but why don't you give someone else a chance to talk? Okay? You ever have everybody in group who dominates? They just want to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. Well, you know, I'd like to shut you up. I mean, to be blunt about things. I've heard about enough out of you. But you know, it's not really polite, and it could embarrass you or shame you for me to call you out in front of everybody. But you know what? I can do this private chat. I can say, hey, your comments are great, but why don't you give somebody else a chance to talk? Only you and I see that. I didn't have to ask you to go out in the hall to have that conversation. If you're being a jerk, I can even say, you know what, Dave, you're being a jerk right now. So why don't you cut it out, or I'm going to boot you out of group or whatever. I can have that kind of a private level conversation while the activity is going on. So I'm going to say, so he says I can talk more. Thanks. I appreciate it. So we have that, and everything else is going on. Now here's even more importantly. What if I said to him, why don't you talk about that issue we discussed yesterday in private. Because have you ever been in group when somebody's talking about something they're contending with or a challenge or whatever, and you know somebody else in the group has done the same thing, but you can't tell them, you can't say it because they told you that in confidence? Okay, you know, okay, I was sexually abused when I was a child too. You know, well, I'm not going to come out in the middle of a group and say, well, you know, I'm glad you brought that up. Dave, you were sexually abused when you were a child too. Why don't you tell him how you told me you dealt with it? I can't do that sort of thing. That's not appropriate. And I don't want to stop group, although I might, to call you out and say, would you feel uncomfortable talking about what you shared with me? Because I think it would really help. What's your name?
Tom.
Tom. I think it would really help Tom out. And I could do that, but I can do it in private chat while we're in the middle of group. And if Dave doesn't feel like talking about it, he can say, no, I don't feel like talking about it. Or if Dave says, yeah, he says, I'm really not ready to bring it into group yet. Good enough. Done. We're done. I'm not going to push him. I'm not going to embarrass. I didn't embarrass him in front of anybody. I didn't give him an opportunity to participate, and everybody saw how selfish and petty he was, that he wouldn't talk about his personal issue or whatever. You know, nothing bad happened. It was just a good deal. And you can do that kind of private conversation with clients, and it's a feature that once you do it and use in a virtual space, you're going to wish you could do it in a real group. You know, you're going to say, boy, I got to figure out a way that I can like send somebody something on a beeper or something, you know.
In a therapeutic setting, groups like that. I'm wondering, and maybe I missed it, you might have said it, has this been piloted at all with an evidence-based curriculum?
Yeah, we're in terms of like a teaching a prescribed course.
Right.
Yeah, we've got there's two projects that are going on. One of them is smoking cessation for college-age students, and they're using the American Lung Association, whatever it's called, Fresh Start or Fresh Breath or something. And it's a textbook curriculum. It's week 3, we talk about this. You know, it's week 4, we talk about this. And the second one is actually a program that's being done with a rural driving under the influence court, a DUI court.
Are the questions that
where
are on here for the participants to go on?
if there's questionnaires that need to be filled in, they can be built in here. Or if it's information that needs to be presented in some kind of a slideshow, they can be programmed into a slideshow presentation. But yeah, so they're doing there's a DUI court program in Missouri where your first offense you have to go to like traffic school, or, you know, DUI school or whatever it is. It's not treatment, it's just getting a talking to, you know, and it's like 16 weeks, once a week for 16 weeks. So they order you to go to this 16-week program, and then they suspend your driver's license until you've completed it. So now you're living out in rural Missouri, you know, amidst the soybeans, and you're thinking, how do I get to, you know, the Christ Episcopal Church in the little town that's my county seat that's 30 miles away when I don't have a driver's license? You know, so what do most people do? They drive anyway. That's exactly right. They defy the court. They defy the law. They drive anyway. You know, a small portion of them get somebody to drive them. A small portion of them just don't come and say the heck with it and go without a driver's license forever, because some people do. But most people just drive illegally, essentially, to do it. So we talked to one of the providers that I'm involved with, talked to this DUI court and said, well, you know, we could deliver this virtually, so they could just get on their computers and they could take the class. And they were like, that's a great idea, you know. So that's a curriculum-based type of a product. But it is very good for delivering counseling. One-on-one counseling, exceptionally good for group counseling, way better than phones or camera, Skype stuff. Skype's not so bad for one-on-one, but it sucks for group, to be honest. It's hard to do a group with multi-webcams, you know. And this is much more immersive, and it really grabs people. It's good for staff training. My last employer that I worked for, where I first started developing this, we had 700 plus employees in 2 states, in 35 offices in 22 cities. Okay, it's a big organization. And in order to have something like a supervisory training day, it costs $9,000, $10,000 just to get everybody there. Pay the mileage, pay their meal costs, pay the half a dozen people that came the farthest who had to come the day before and stay overnight because it was too far to drive both directions in the same day, plus have a whole day of training. You know, and I mean, that all stuff just all started to mount up, and it was very expensive to do that. We could do a supervisory training session in the virtual space for essentially nothing once we had the virtual space. You know, we did job screenings in virtual space. We would hire a position where we might have applicants from all around the country. Instead of flying the 10 best people in, we interviewed the 10 best people in the virtual space. It allowed multiple people from our organization who didn't necessarily live near one another to be in on the interview at whatever time was convenient for the applicant without having to drive back and forth. I got to go 100 miles to your office so we're all in the same place. We could all be in the same place at the same time. We could narrow it down to the 2 or 3 people that look the best, and then we fly them in. You know, it doesn't mean we wouldn't want to see them, but we can narrow it down before we spend a whole lot of money. You know, we know there's 10 questions I want to ask everybody, and depending on how you answer, you're not going to go to round 3, you know? I mean, that's the bottom line, but I can, we would use avatars, yeah. And it worked great, you know? I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, yes. We're at 4, by the way, if any of you are keeping track of that, and I told the people from the time before that I'd probably still be here answering questions, so I'm willing to stay and answer your questions. Oh, go ahead.
So if one avatar physically or verbally assaults another avatar, is there, and it just gets out of hand, can the counselor shut it down?
Sure, you can shut the space down if you want to, yes. Yeah, you can get back-end controls, and there's a lot of back-end controls. I mean, I won't be, the way I usually express it is, it's neither rocket science nor trivial. Okay, so you could be trained to learn how to get in the back end of the virtual space and do things like that if you needed to. It's not the simplest thing in the world, but it's not beyond most people's capabilities. What else? We're good? Okay, well, and we're at the right time, so thank you for your time and attention. I appreciate it. I did leave some brochures over there. I think there's still some left, and if not, I've got more up here. If anybody wants to take anything home with you, please feel free to contact me or contact Dave about the Maryland programs. I'm sure.